On April 15, 2023, Germany shut down its last 3 nuclear reactors. Not because they broke, because the plan said so. But here's the crazy part. That plan had a hidden weak spot baked in from day one. The plan had a name, Energiewende. It sounds gentle, almost like a slogan. In reality, it was one of the most ambitious economic gambles in Europe since the Cold War ended. The idea started small. Back in the early 1980s, green thinking was becoming fashionable in Germany. At first, it was just a vibe, a direction, a feeling about the future. Then the state showed up with real money and real laws. Atomic power got squeezed. The mix got pushed hard toward renewables. Wind and sun were now the chosen future. Under Angela Merkel, Energiewende became a national mission, almost a moral one. But missions can hide their flaws, and this one had a big crack running right through the middle. Here is the crack. Wind and sun look amazing in a brochure, but they cannot promise you stable power. When the air goes still, the lights still need to stay on. So you need a backup, something flexible, something that fires up fast the moment the weather lets you down. In this plan, that backup was gas, and the gas was supposed to come mostly from one place. Russia. It was cheap, it was available, and for years it was sold as the sensible middle road. Cleaner than coal, steadier than wind, the perfect bridge to a green tomorrow. At least, that is how the story went. Remember that word, bridge. It matters later. But there was a problem. Russian gas already flowed into Europe. It just came through Eastern Europe through a maze of pipelines across other countries. And transit means leverage, negotiations, disputes, other nations with their hands on the tap. Germany wanted that tap for itself, so it built its own pipe. Nord Stream, a pipeline straight under the Baltic Sea, directly into Germany, skipping Poland, skipping Ukraine. This was not just about cheaper energy. It was about power, 2 huge wins at once. Germany would stop being a hostage to the Eastern transit route, and it would become the main gateway for gas heading deeper into Europe. Gas would land in Germany, then get sent west to everyone else. That is real energy centralization done in white gloves, and it would hand Germany a massive bargaining chip. Now you can see why nuclear power was suddenly the enemy. Atomic energy was competition for this whole model. Think about it. If Europe built its grids on nuclear, German gas would not be the mandatory backbone of the system. And without that backbone, the entire plan falls apart. And you do not have to take this on faith. Just look at what actually survived in the German power mix after years of this policy. The numbers tell the whole story. Top of the list, wind, around 132 terawatt hours. Then solar, around 87 terawatt hours. On paper, renewables really are huge. You can see it with your own eyes. But right next to those numbers sit the ones Germany would rather not put on the poster. Gas, around 82 terawatt hours. Brown coal, around 68. Hard coal, around 26. And nuclear, it is not there at all. 0. Germany literally cut out a source that, 15 years ago, gave it about a quarter of its electricity. So how do you convince a whole country to kill its own atomic power? Simple. You do not use spreadsheets. You use fear. 2 words did most of the work. Chernobyl, Fukushima. Flash those images, and a calm talk about stable energy turns into a talk about disaster, contamination, and catastrophe. And for a long time, this whole setup worked beautifully, but only because it lived in one specific world. A world of cheap, reliable, no questions asked fuel. Then that world ended, brutally. In late February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, and in a single moment, the era of elegant plans and steady deliveries was over. Suddenly, everyone saw what Poland, Ukraine, and the Baltic states had been shouting for years. Russian gas was never a neutral service. It was a political lever. And this is the part almost nobody says out loud. Energiewende was always a plan with gas as the stabilizer. Wind and solar gave the headlines. Gas gave the reliability. When the weather did not deliver, flexible gas turbines could ramp up power in about 10 minutes and steady a grid starting to panic. But Germany did not want just any gas. It wanted gas that was cheap, plentiful, and predictable, exactly the kind Russia had supplied for years. That is why Nord Stream mattered so much. It was never only about fuel, it was about position. Be the main gate for Russian gas into Western Europe, and you basically become the energy heart of the continent. Then the gas stops flowing the way it used to, and the German model takes a bullet to the knee, because it turns out the great stabilizer was politically unstable all along. So Germany faced 2 doors, and neither one was comfortable. Door 1 announced that nuclear stays after all, but that would mean publicly admitting Energiewende was not ready without gas, a total image disaster for a project sold as almost moral. Door 2, rapidly scale up imported liquid gas, ship it in from Scandinavia and elsewhere, and pretend it is the same as the Russian pipes. It worked, eventually, but the price was brutal. And here's where it gets stranger. Germany was now trapped inside its own story. To understand the real cost, you have to understand what Germany actually lives on. Everything in Germany revolves around making things, real things you can touch, chemicals, steel, machines, cars, exports. These processes have a rhythm. They need stable power and a stable price. And here is the punchline. Energiewende was built like a story about saving the planet, but industry has a different kind of morality, a simple calculation. Energy cost becomes product cost. Product cost becomes competitiveness, and competitiveness decides one thing. Do you make a profit here, or do you pack up and run? For years, Germans paid some of the highest electricity rates in all of Europe. Why? Because transformation is expensive. Billions of euros poured into renewable subsidies. And at the same time, coal and gas plants had to be kept on standby for every windless day. So the model became an experiment, one where citizens paid record sums for a vision that cracked at its first real geopolitical test. Now another paradox. Energiewende was supposed to give Europe independence. Instead, in many places, it just swapped one dependency for another. Yes, Russian gas became the symbol of risk, but when Europe started pumping money into renewables, a key part of that new era turned out to be built somewhere else entirely, in Asia. And we are not talking about small details. A solar panel is an industrial product. It has a supply chain, factories, chemicals, silicon, transport, assembly. If most of that chain sits outside Europe, then Europe can dream of energy sovereignty all it likes. But if someone tightens the tap on components tomorrow, where do you get them? Now, to be fair, renewables are not the villain here. On a home roof, a farm, a business, or as one piece of a national grid, they work brilliantly. Cheap, low-emission power. The problem starts when you try to make them the entire backbone of a giant industrial economy. Then you have to ask, are we really saving money or quietly paying extra for the privilege? And not everyone followed Germany off this cliff. The perfect counterexample is right next door, France. France went all in on nuclear, so hard that it made atomic power the foundation of the state. Around 70% of French electricity comes from a fleet of 57 reactors. That is the base you build a whole country on. Industry, transport, electrification, anything. And here is the irony that stings the most. While Germany was switching reactors off, power flowed into Germany from countries that kept their nuclear running. Germany built a system that works only when everything goes to plan. France built one that works when the plan falls apart. France is not flawless either. In 2022, it had to shut down part of its fleet over corrosion faults. Proof that even atomic giants need care, and decades of neglect come back to bite. But here is the difference. France learned from it and announced a huge nuclear renaissance. Germany, in a similar spot, chose to close its eyes and finish dismantling its last reactors. And France is not alone in going against the German story. Poland has an official program for a large nuclear plant on its coast. The Czechs are planning new atomic capacity. For an industrial country, that is simply insurance against price shocks and weather swings. Sweden has come back to the table on new reactors too. And then it gets even more interesting. Nuclear is not just coming back as the giant state power plant. It is returning as something far more modern, small modular reactors called SMRs, faster to build and placed exactly where the power is needed. And this is happening right now. Amazon is backing SMR projects. Microsoft signed a long-term deal to restart a famous clean energy site. Google partnered up on small reactors too. The tech giants want stable power, and they are not betting on the wind. In this whole puzzle, France today looks like calm next to Germany, but calm is not the same as safe, because even with nuclear, political fights can flip a country upside down, and that is a story for the video on your screen right now.